Hello, and welcome to an ICB webinar. Today we are here to talk about GoProposal. So I'm joined by Susanna Whelan, one of our ICB bookkeepers, and Jack from GoProposal by Sage. The housekeeping at the top. This session has been recorded, so if you get bored halfway through, which you won't, you can come back and watch it. We'll be sending out the recording afterwards. Please use the Q&A, and first of all, say hello to us. Make sure we know where you are in the world, and let us know if you've used GoProposal before, what your experiences are, if we've got any particular questions around it. Hello. It's lovely when everyone starts saying hello. So what we're doing today is we're doing a full review of GoProposal, and this is why we've got Susanna in, because she's recently completed an accreditation. At ICB, we're always on the lookout for things that are better bookkeepers. So as part of this, we ask members to review software. And so Susanna's you're a long time user of GoProposal, aren't you? It's not one-off. So you've got real first-hand knowledge. And what we're looking to do with this is find out how these pieces of software work for bookkeepers, not for accountants or end users or anything like that. We want to make sure that we know how it suits you. So you've probably, if you're here, you would have heard of the name. And I think GoProposal's been around. I mean, it's not old, is it, Jack? But
no, it's so 2017 is when it was founded.
2017.
Yeah.
Really started flying around 2019, 2020, didn't it? Big scene then. But can you pitch it to us? Because I think we might think that we know GoProposal, but tell us what it really does for bookkeepers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose if I was going to go with the official line, it's all about how we engage with our clients. So the reason that we talk about the term engagement is because we don't just do the pricing piece. We can also support with the creation of letters of engagement to make sure they're all up to speed, and we can make that part of it easier, but also the AML side of things to make sure that we've got that sorted. But I think unofficially, the most important thing here is that it's a tool to have better pricing conversations with your clients. I think one of the things that I've learned from working with bookkeepers over the time is that sometimes sense of feeling undervalued with what you're doing. I think it's often very unfairly felt in terms of the work that's done, and I think this system's here to make people be able to communicate that value and take control of that pricing conversation, but also that cadence of that conversation. How regularly should you be having it? How often should you be reviewing your fees? And do you want to make sure that you've got the right letter of engagement, the right approval of a KYC and risk assessment as part of that to make you fully confident that everything's in place?
Yeah. So it really formalizes those conversations, doesn't it? And I think for bookkeepers, I know when they're first starting out, especially, there is that sort of caution, isn't there, around those pricing conversations, and I'll just charge you this or I'll just charge you that. So having something like this in place does force you to formulate everything into a plan, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think that is exactly right. The structure of what it is that you're doing and making it really, really clear in terms of that breakdown, because I think, again, when people start out, and the people I've worked with, so, I'm not a bookkeeper, I'm not an accountant for full transparency, but been working with them since 2017. Yeah. One of the things that I see from the start when people are starting out is sort of a big grouping of work. So, I'm a bookkeeper, I'll come in, I'll do all of this stuff for you, and I'll charge you X amount for it. Whereas when you get more down the line, you realize that by breaking it down into much more simpler services that you offer, much more transparent, you're able to have a much clearer picture of the work that you're doing for that business. One of the biggest challenges that people have if they're coming to GoProposal after having legacy clients is they've said, okay, our service is, £1,000 a year, for example, and there's no real clear breakdown of what's in that. So having a conversation on that fee having to go up is really tricky. Whereas if you say, okay, for your bank reconciliation service, we've got X, Y, and Z agreed, you can see that this is improved. And I'll show this in the system when we get into that, but I think it's that transparency and that structure that really helps.
Yeah. It's preventing scope creep. Right, so let's hear from the person who's actually using the system. So Susanna, can you just go back to the beginning then? Talk about why what was missing in your practice that you sought out something like Go Proposal in the first place?
Okay, so I've been in practice nearly 16 years now, so a long time.
Straight out of school?
Yeah, no, no, I wish. But a lot has changed in that time in the role of the bookkeeper and the tools that we use. So when I started, it was desktop software. You used to go into a client's office and work there on their desktop software. You used to print everything out and file it. And when I first started, I used to have to wait for bank statements to arrive. We didn't always even have online banking with some clients. I sound like a complete dinosaur, but that's what it was like.
Yeah.
And I had gone into bookkeeping as a second career after I'd had my children, and I wanted to build a business slowly around my family, and I wanted it to be flexible. And it was at the start, but I was very restricted going into clients' offices, and I was charging an hourly rate, which isn't the best for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of kind of restrictions and problems with hourly rates. And it got to a point where I couldn't really grow my business anymore. So as cloud software and data capture software and bank feeds became available, I could see how these would improve efficiencies and allow me to sort of streamline and save time and take on more work. But that meant at the same time, because I was on an hourly rate and I was going into clients' offices, I was going to have to charge them less because they would see it was taking me less time.
Yeah.
And when you're tied to an hourly rate, you're exchanging time for money, and it's very difficult then to sort of put your fees up apart from by doing more work. So when you're spending money on software to try and speed you up, that means you're charging less and it's costing you more.
Yes.
So,
yeah. So you've got a double hit there.
Double hit, exactly. So I knew I needed to change my entire practice, how I was working, and everything to try and sort of counteract that so that I could really start to grow, because I was restricted to office hours and childcare, and I had to work in clients' offices. I had to leave enough time that you know, for contingencies such as if the kids were ill or if there was a bank holiday, and it just really restricted me. So how I started was I decided to move my client base to sort of to start working more remotely. And to do that, I had to move them to a fixed fee. And I kind of articulated it by saying, I think you will be more comfortable with paying me a fixed fee because you won't have that visibility over my hours like you used to. So you're not really seeing how long it's taking. So let's move on to a fixed fee, because that's more transparent. It gives you certainty. You know what you're going to be paying me each month. But I didn't have a tool to work out that fee. So what I did was I worked out my average fees for that client, for each client, over 12 months, added it all up, divided it by 12, and added a little bit on for contingency. I did also charge them for software because I explained the benefits of the software to them, that they would, you know, how they would benefit, not just, I didn't kind of say it's saving me time. I explained the benefits that the client would see. And I moved, that worked. I moved remotely. That worked for a while. This was thankfully well in advance of COVID, because we would have had to have done all this anyway, and it would have been a nightmare. So that all worked well, but actually it was COVID that changed everything, because then you had scope creep with things like furloughs and all the grants and all the additional advisory that clients were needing and help with getting loans and stuff like that. At the same time, clients' businesses were suffering. Everything went a bit haywire, and for a while I ended up having to reduce fees for certain clients because their turnover was massively reduced. But having said that, what I realised was their transaction level, the volumes weren't reduced, just the amounts, the actual sort of amounts on the transactions might be smaller. They were spending less and earning less, but we still had
to do the work.
Yeah, still had the work. So I needed to find something that would help me articulate all of this. And at the same time that this was all happening, all the webinars and things were going crazy, which was great because I hadn't been able to benefit from those when I was in clients' offices, but now I could watch webinars. And that was when I first heard of things like value pricing and different things like that, and then GoProposal. And I could see how it would work for me. So yeah, that was how I started using GoProposal, and it did change everything for me.
And so what I think you're saying is that you're not using GoProposal as a one-off. You're not saying I've got a new client and I'm going to onboard them with GoProposal. You're using it on a regular basis with your existing clients. Is that correct?
Definitely. And when I first looked into GoProposal, I thought, oh, this isn't for me because I'm only a small practice. It's just me. I don't take on loads of new clients. You know, I do take on clients every now and then, and that was something I used to dread, actually, having that initial pricing conversation, because clients would phone you up, or prospects would phone you up and say, what do you charge for bookkeeping? And it's like, it's how long is a piece of string? And what they don't even know what they need.
No.
And I could see how GoProposal would give me a framework for those conversations, and that's how I thought I would use it at first. I didn't really consider repricing my existing client base. But as I grew more confident with it and more familiar with the software, I started running through existing clients and sort of putting them through the software and seeing what their fee was coming out at. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm really undercharging here.
Yes.
And because when you're just charging for bookkeeping or payroll or whatever, or VAT returns, you're not actually breaking down the different levels of complexity that might involve. So you could have, for example, bookkeeping for a client, and they might have 3 or 4 different bank accounts. So that's 3 or 4 different bank reconciliations, and you can build in those variables to GoProposal and charge for them. And things like, they might say, I've got, I don't know, 50 purchase invoices a month, but within those purchase invoices, a lot of them might have different VAT rates and different categories. So you've got multiple lines that need to be thought through and posted for each one purchase invoice. Again, you can build that in.
I think that helps the client understand how complex their needs are as well. Like, quite interested. I just want to go through what I do want to go through that, how it builds up, the proposal. But I think the things you're saying around pricing are really interesting, and I'd really like to ask people listening today what their views are on pricing, and how whether they're still using hourly pricing, or they're doing project pricing, or whatever. So I'd be really interested to hear people's philosophy on that, because what we see in terms of surveys and things we do is that there still seem to be lots of different methods of pricing used all at once. It's not clear cut. So talk us through it then. We don't have to. I know Jack's going to show some other wiki bits soon, but so when you have when you're working with a client, talk us through it, how you build it. How does the client data get into the system? Do you have to key it all in? What goes on there?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah. So what I do, so if it's a prospect and someone brand new, when I sort of first when they're first getting in touch, I send out a list of questions about what is involved, what's happening with their business, or we might do this over the phone and I'll note it all down, how many transactions, or I'll say to them, can you go away and look at how many transactions a month roughly in your bank account, how many purchase invoices, how many sales invoices, so I can build a picture, and I can find out things like their turnover, whether or not they're VAT registered, whether they want payroll, how many staff. So I've got that information. What I do personally is I run through a dummy proposal on my own first, so that I've got an idea of firstly, I've got an idea what the fee is going to come out of, but secondly, it going through that framework makes you think of things that the client won't think to ask, and you might forget on a call. So it prompts you, and you've got all these different line items. They might need that or whatever. So you can go through it all, and you can you get an idea of what the fee is going to be, and you can preempt questions and objections and sort of formulate your answers and your responses in advance, which makes you feel a lot more confident on a call. And then what I do is I go through it with them on a Zoom or in person, and we fill it out step by step. So you sort of say, so how many, we're looking at your bookkeeping now, how many purchase invoices a month? And I put bandings in, so it'd be between 1 and 10, 11 and 20 and so on. And then we tick that and they agree, they're going through it with you. So they're agreeing to every step for the services that they want. And yeah, you build it like that.
And before that, then you have to put you have to put that information in there.
Yeah, so you set it all up. This is obviously, yeah, after you've got your GoProposal formulated and set up, which does take some time. You fill out a basic wizard when you're initially setting it up, which is, I think it asks you questions based on a couple of questions, takes about 5 minutes. It's what would you charge for bookkeeping for X amount of transactions for your what you consider to be your most profitable client.
So you're not having to build it from scratch. It's asking
no, you don't have to build it from scratch, and it's got a lot of the categories, the sort of standard categories are already entered, and then that pre-populates according to what you've priced. There's like a clever algorithm that does it all. And then
Jack,
you start tweaking.
You're smiling. Are you smiling because Susanna's doing a good job, or are you?
Absolutely, yes. Oh, yes, definitely, exactly. Spot on.
Yeah.
So it is quite straightforward to set up at the start. So you're with a client right at the start of your relationship, and what I can imagine is already you're appearing professional and you're appearing organized because you're being methodical, aren't you? All the things that a great ICB bookkeeper is, you're giving that impression. And so what's their reaction then when they receive the kind of end result?
With the price, it depends. I personally think that a fixed monthly fee is easier to deliver than an hourly rate if you're charging properly, because if you're charging properly, your hourly rate is going to be quite high, because you have to build in, we are a business, and when you charge an hourly rate, it's very easy for the client to sort of have an employer mindset and compare it to what they're paying their employees. You yourself often think, oh, I can't charge that, that sounds too high. But what you're forgetting is you're running a business, you've got a lot of other costs, you've got your CPD, you've got your ICB membership, there's so many other things that go into it that need to be reflected within that hourly rate.
Yeah.
So an hourly rate can often look expensive, but if you're charging for a finished result, an end result, what they're going to pay a month, and they can see how you've got that because you've added in services. And if it's too expensive, you can say it's okay, well, we can go back and we can maybe remove, you don't want,
yes, you've got the flexibility to do that,
so you can tweak it. But I think the fixed fee delivers certainty. They know what they're going to pay every month. You can also explain, we review it regularly. So at the beginning, I would review it more, and then you kind of get an idea. Then I always sort of aim to review it quarterly, but it depends. And you kind of know yourself if the volume has changed dramatically.
Yes.
And that way the client is reassured as well that if the transaction levels drop, the fee will drop, but also if they go up, the fee will go up, and it's fair and it's transparent and it's broken down, and they can see that. And then when they get their proposal, they can see, well, this is based on 50 bank transactions a month. So when you start doing the work, if it's a lot more than that, you can go back and say that you didn't give me the correct information, so I do need to charge more. And it makes that conversation easier. And you've also set the expectation right from the start that it's going to be reviewed regularly.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, so it becomes a basis for review, doesn't it? In that way. Great. Okay. So let's just move on to some more specific questions about using the software then. You've been using it since?
I think I've been using it about 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years.
So you are you're a veteran, Jack. Susanna must be one of the longest running.
I don't think I'm one of the longest. I think.
Yes, you're definitely early cohort, I'd say, in terms of the time frame. Absolutely.
Yeah. What advice have you got for people who are bringing it on now? Is it something that's suitable for somebody who's got, who is just working, when you think about you when you started off, is it suitable for somebody who's starting a practice and like you, this happens to so many ICB members, they're starting a practice because they want to work it around their family commitments, or is it more better to wait until it's your practice is more established?
I
Close your
wish
ears,
I'd
Jack.
started using it earlier.
Okay.
I didn't start using it till I'd been going for at least 10 years.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
10 years of undercharging, 10 years of probably not taking on work because I was dreading having that proposal meeting and not knowing what I was, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to charge. All those years of underpricing clients. Actually, last year, I did a little exercise just for my own purposes where I looked at my cumulative revenue that I'd turned over the 15 years at that point that I'd been in practice, and I wanted to see how much money I'd made since I'd set up. And what was interesting was in the last 4 years of that 15 years, I'd made more than half of my money. Now, some of that was because my practice had grown, but a lot of it was because I was charging properly.
And those clients that you'd had all that time, how did your pricing changed? How did they react to it? Was it a problem between you, or was that?
It wasn't easy. I'm not going to pretend it was easy. Some clients, I had one that I was dreading, and that was the hardest one to do, and it was really difficult. And their fee, I'd been with them for about nearly 10 years, I think, at that point, and their fee was it was quite a big fee anyway, because it was a lot of work. But their fee was going to have to double pretty much. And they were a difficult client anyway, and that was quite a hard conversation. But they did agree to it eventually.
Well, because you could explain it.
I could explain it, and what I had realised in this time, and what they said themselves, was they had no idea what I did and what was involved. And that's another lovely thing about GoProposal, because you're literally articulating the value you're providing. When they think you just do bookkeeping, and unfortunately, as we know, bookkeeping it's coming out of it now, but certainly for years, everyone just thought bookkeeping and admin were pretty much the same kind of thing, and they didn't really understand the value of what it is that we as qualified bookkeepers do, and the extent of the services that we provide. And they didn't really realize what I was doing for them. And they didn't even know how many bank accounts they had. They didn't know, there was so much they didn't know about their own business and what was involved in keeping them up to date and keeping them compliant. So once they understood that, they could understand why I was needing to put the fee up. And it had changed a lot in that time as well, because they'd grown as a business, and there had been lots of scope creep, as well as the extra transaction volume. So they did kind of understand that part when it was pointed out to them. So yeah, having that framework to go through and sitting there with them, and then the fee coming out, they were a bit shocked.
Yeah.
And they said, can we think about it? And I said, you can, but it needs to change, and it does need to increase. And I also was honest, and I said, it's my fault to a degree, because I have been undercharging you, and I've let this happen because I didn't want to have this awkward conversation.
But I think that's maturity as a business owner as well, that you're going through that. Right, we're being far too nice about GoProposal now. Now, I promised that I wouldn't make Jack cry, but we do want to. Jack's got some exciting developments that we want to have a look at. Before we do that, Susanna, I'm going to ask you to be honest. What are the improvements? What do you wish it could do? I mean, obviously, stack the dishwasher and do the washing, but what do you wish GoProposal could do or do differently?
I don't know. I really like. I hadn't thought about that, to be honest with you. I can't think. It does take a while to set up.
Okay.
But it is a. I mean, even now, after all this time, my GoProposal is not a finished document. It is still evolving, and I love how you can add services in, you can tailor it, you can tweak it. So I mean, I added something in. I added a new service just the other week for invoice fetching. It makes you charge for everything. So, for example, I've got a couple of clients who like me to log into their supply portals to download the purchase invoices. And I suddenly thought, I'm doing this for free. and it takes up my time. It's more time, so I can charge that, so I can add it in. So I suppose it is, you do have to spend time and think about it and learn the software. It's not sort of, you can't expect to just to do everything for you. But yeah, that's
what Susanna did there was a perfect politician's answer. They asked her for something negative and she switched it around to something positive, and I think that's amazing. Good training. Whoever did your media training is very well done. So I do want to talk specifically about the packages and things, because I think we can talk about how lovely the software is, but unless we know it's affordable and feasible for bookkeepers, then it's a no-go, isn't it? Do you want to just show us? Do you want to show us your new shiny thing, Jack? The new thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
and then we'll talk about the price.
Then we can talk about price. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll go through this just for complete transparency. This hasn't been completely approved by the business to be included just yet.
Oh.
So it is going through the process at the minute, but it's just not quite there yet. Just so we're aware of that piece. What I'm going to show you now is just a little bit of GoProposal. So this is a good chance for you guys to see how it would
take a look at it, yeah.
How it would work, but also I'm going to go through a little bit of a scenario around MTD. So can everyone see my screen okay at the minute?
Yes, now I can.
Fantastic. Okay, so assume that we're sat here having a conversation with a client, and assume this is a client where we are going to have a change in the way we work in April 2026. Now, what I've set up in here is as a send bookkeeping, we'll call that. Now it's accounting there, but let's say a send bookkeeping. I want to introduce the changes that are coming as early as possible. So what I've got in here now is I have my getting ready for making tax digital setup that I've built within here. So what we can see at the top here, I'm defining my templates that I'm using. So in terms of what documents they're going to get, what letter of engagement they're going to get, the revenue range, when's the start date, year end date, things like that, just the basics. But then what I'm doing here is I'm introducing them to the services that we're going to be offering here. So when we're talking about that granularity, when we're talking about breaking things down and making it really clear and simple, this is what we're talking about within here. So what I've done with this particular client is I am setting them up with services that are on their roadmap. So in my proposal, my document that I send through, they're going to be aware of these changes. The reason that I'm doing this is because I'm scared of the changes that are coming. I'm scared of changing the way that I work with this client, and my head's about to burst with everything that's coming. So I want to start teeing people up as early as possible, so the start of next year isn't completely horrific for me. So what I'm doing is I'm inviting them into a session here to discuss how things are going to change next year. So the services that I'm showing them, from setting up their digital ledger, delivering their self-assessment tax return, data processing, bank reconciliation, digital bookkeeping. So I've separated that out to make it clear that the expertise that we bring to the table to make sure that everything is correct in their books is separate to just the data processing. That's something that I want to make really clear in terms of that expertise that I'm going to bring to the table. And then also the ability to introduce a business review. So do they want to start using this data that we're going to be getting more regularly to start having conversations with how their business is going, what the books are telling them in terms of what their year is going to look like. So within here, within my system, as I make these selections, so if I just unselect that and then reselect that, the system's going to prompt me with the questions that I need to answer to make sure that's right. So when we're thinking about exactly what Susanna said around it not being just an hourly rate, but broken down into the services that we're offering, I'm making it really clear to this individual what is going to be their fee structure. So number of items I'm going to process, what system we're going to be using, what's the quality of their bookkeeping look like. So one of the things that we often do is we would only let them have excellent if we're doing everything. So if we're the bookkeepers doing all of the work, then they can have excellent. If they're letting people at their end do certain things where we're going back and have to check things, monitor work for someone who internally might not be doing the job they need to be doing, we can lower that quality of that records when we're having to pick up the slack from the people. So what this is doing is, one, framing up what the changes are that are going to be coming, but also I've got another service here, which is an alignment for the self-assessment tax return. So what I've built into my system here is, it's March 2025, but I'm already thinking when it comes to April 2026, I'm going to have to get the fee for the return that we've just done, and then ideally I want to get them onto a monthly plan to make sure that I can get paid for the work that I'll be doing more regularly. That's going to be a difficult conversation, enough as it is, to say pay us for what we've just done and start paying us what we're going to do moving forward as well. So what I'm doing is I'm giving them the option now to make that easier, to rather than pay that lump sum annually like they have been doing, I'm going to use GoProposal to say, okay, from today, you can pay me on a monthly basis from now to make that a little bit easier. It'll help with your cash flow, it'll lower that fee. And then when all these changes do come in with all these exciting opportunities that we've got to get close to your data and really understand how your business is performing, we're then going to also move on to a monthly fee that will include these other services. So once I've done that, I can then come down and present that fee to the client in terms of what they're going to be paying on a monthly basis. So they're catching up with a £20 a month fee now until next April, and then we're going to revisit this and establish that conversation even further to say, these are the services that we're going to introduce on that front moving forward. So I appreciate it's a really quick whistle-stop tour of how we present services to clients on a very specific example, but I just want to give you guys a feel for how we would use that to interact with our clients. And there's lots more I can show you, but I won't go into that right now.
Well, I think Lydia posted in the chat around some other things. Jack's everywhere, to be honest with you. So you'll be doing other more in-depth demos, won't you? I think that's really interesting. I also think it's really interesting to think about how clients and small businesses and landlords and sole traders are going to react when we start telling them how much they're going to have to pay for these services to be delivered, thanks to HMRC. So it really is worth having those conversations now, isn't it, Jack? To prepare people for MTD.
Absolutely, yeah. In terms of the work that we've been doing, so we've been on the road presenting to people around what we would suggest around this. And if you start doing the numbers in terms of the number of conversations you're going to have to start having, if you've got 50 of these people on your books, for example, you need to start having 2 conversations a week, or a conversation a week from tomorrow, basically, to be ready for it. So when you start thinking about the number of people you've got to talk through a change, then it's starting to get to the point now where we should be starting to have those conversations. Yeah.
For ICB members, not only are we talking to Craig Ogilvie from HMRC 2 weeks on Wednesday the 19th, that we're having an Ask Me Anything session then. The week after, we're starting in terms of webinars that are going to help you prepare for MTD. And we're doing, our first one is around customer profiling, helping you understand which customers you need to talk to and how to talk to them. But yeah, I know a lot of ICB members are going to are coming to the Sage Roadshows, Jack, as well. So I think it'd been a great thing to get out there. Right, so we're just coming to time now. I don't want to take everyone's whole lunch hour. So can you talk to a little bit about the pricing, about the packages? Is this accessible? Is this a reasonable thing for a one man band, or how does it scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of the way it works, I'm just going to show you our core pricing on the screen here. So in terms of we've got the solo package, which is the £65 a month package, which is the introduction there. Within that, which is what would allow you to have 5 of those conversations a month across the year. So that's the intro package for people who, let's say, they're getting ready for that MTD conversation. That's been really popular for people who want to start having those conversations, because they know if they're ready from April, May, June this year to start having those conversations, they'll pick everyone up in that frequency, and they'll be able to continue having that conversation on a quarterly basis with them moving forward. So that's the intro package, and it just scales on the number of users and the number of proposals that you need to send off the back of that. Now, there's separate add-ons for the AML and the Oversuite, which again we can explore in more detail if anyone wants to look at that. But that's how the intro packages would work. Now, when it comes to thinking about the fee there, I think what we tend to see is a 25 to 30% uplift on fees within there. So if you are someone who wants to go away and do a calculation, then that's the calculation that you can do. If you look at your turnover, think about 20 to 30% on top of that. Does that cover these costs? Because I'll be completely honest, for some people, if you've got 5 or 6 clients and you're just starting out, probably not. It's not going to be quite right for you. I'd be thinking about the principles behind it, so you're ready to make sure that you've got that, but it may be that it doesn't wipe its feet there. So that would just be a calculation I would be thinking about if I was looking at this. Again, I would say, like with the principles that Suzanne's outlined, the problems that is caused by going longer and longer without having those structures in place is the other consideration. But I think that's a nice, easy place to start.
Yeah. And so it's not so much about it just washing its face, is it? I mean, Suzanne was telling us that evidence here that it's going to pay for itself if you've got a certain amount of clients, because you're going to be charging more, as you said. But also, like, it's that reiterating your value as a professional bookkeeper. And this is something we try and do with ICB bookkeepers all the time, is just remind them about that, their quality and how they've studied, and there's a reason you should have value, hold yourself with value.
Can I just say something as well? Just
yes,
going
Suzanne,
back
you
to,
can.
sorry, something you asked me before, and I don't think I answered it properly, but the way that it looks so professional, not just the process of putting the proposal together in the first place, but the fact that at the end of that proposal, you're clicking a button, you're sending them a proposal and a letter of engagement, which is properly set out. It looks really, really impressive. And when they see that, compared to, well, certainly what I was doing previously, which was cobbling something together on a Word document and probably sending it about 3 days after the conversation, it elevates you in their eyes, and you can charge more because of it. They're not so shocked if you're charging more, because I like to say, I'm reassuringly expensive.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, completely. It shows that quality, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Was there anything else, Susanna, you wanted to add before we let people get on back to their cheese and pickle sandwiches?
No, I don't think so.
Jack, anything else?
No, just thank you very much for having me. And if anyone does want to reach out on LinkedIn and chat about anything I've said or argue with anything I've said, I'm up for anything like that. So yes, give me a message on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat to anybody.
One at the end. Oh yes, sorry, Lydia's answered it. Torben just asked, as it's a Sage product, can it be used with other applications? Integration, there's integrations, everyone's nodding.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so you're not restricted to the Sage Ledger, you can use Xero and QuickBooks as well.
Okay, fantastic. If you've got any other questions, as you said, I know Jack always loves to chat, and so does Susanna. Susanna, you're going to be at the Festival of Accounting and Bookkeeping next week, aren't you? Talking there, and ICB are out and about as well this month, so and also look on the website because we've got lots of webinars coming up this month, so do check them out. But thank you for your time today, Susanna and Jack, and it's been great to spend some time with you. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.